Hello, this is David Cross from Indispensable Leadership, and I want to talk to you a little bit today about goals. I'm going to be doing a number of episodes on goals, on how to achieve your goals, on very specific ways that you can make your goals happen. But today we're going to start with the big question, which is how do you choose your goal? Specifically, how do you choose that main goal? We'll talk about subsidiary goals down the line. How do you choose your main goal? In other words, how do you know what your calling is? How do you know what that thing is that's worth pushing everything towards, that's worth sacrificing for? Happiness, which is something you get when you're spending your life doing your calling, happiness is an achievement, just like anything else. And therefore, happiness is something that requires planning, just like everything else. Nobody ever just turned up on Mount Everest and said, how did I get here? They had to plan. They had to figure it out. They spent months, if not years, of time planning to get on the top of Mount Everest. And achieving your main goal, which of course you never totally achieve. You're always going forward. He not busy being born is busy dying, right? But achieving in terms of putting yourself in the situation where you are spending your time on your calling is going to be an achievement that you're going to have to plan for and goal set for. I talk to a lot of people in my seminars and other places that say, I don't know what I want to do, David. I don't know. What that means is probably you're a little depressed, probably, not necessarily, but possibly you're depressed, but certainly you've become disconnected from what you want. Maybe you've spent so much time trying to achieve other people's goals that you think it's too late to turn around. Maybe you've just gotten disassociated from yourself. There's an old Greek saying, know thyself. Know thyself. That's going to be a key to figuring out your calling, really understanding yourself. I do yoga now, and yoga is a great way to know yourself because yoga is the truth. There's no lies in yoga. Once you get over the ego part of it, you learn about your body, you learn about yourself, you learn about limitations, and you learn about abilities that you didn't know you had. Well, what does that have to do with what you're talking about? It does. It's a process of getting past all the BS, getting past what your mother wants you to do, getting past what society wants you to do, getting past what your spouse wants you to do, getting past what you think you want to do, and figuring out what you want. I want to be a millionaire, David. Okay, why? You have to have a why for what you want. That's one of the things, because nobody wants to be a millionaire. What people want is what that is in their mind going to give them. Power, entertainment, I don't know what they think. But until you know the why, you're not going to know the what. And I can't tell you how you figure out what your calling is other than to let go of the way you're trying to direct your own mind and releasing yourself, because the answer is already there inside you. It just is. And everybody does have something out there that they could be happy doing. You are not somebody who can't be happy, because such people are not created. There is something out there that if you spend your time on it, you're going to be happy. And I want to talk about David Olney. David Olney was a tremendous folk singer. And I saw him on numerous occasions. He was one of the most interesting writers. I say folk singer, you could call him country western, you could call him a few different things. But one of the interesting things was he just wrote about subjects that other people never thought of writing about. Wrote a beautiful song about a caterpillar, wrote a couple songs from the perspective of a horse, wrote about ancient biblical things, all sorts of different things. And David Olney is somebody who absolutely was doing what he loved to do. When you meet these people, you always know it. I've met a few of them. People who you meet them and they're on fire with what it is that they love to do. And I used to see David Olney. He came out to Philadelphia all the time. And I don't know who his agent was, but it seemed like he was always coming out to very small groups, usually in Quakers meeting houses. Well, one of these, which I thought was crazy, to me, this is a guy like Townes Van Zandt. This is a guy that should be ranked with the greatest country western folk writers ever. And when I would show up and there were only about 30, 40 people, I was glad to have such an intimate setting, but I always felt like, well, there should be a lot more people here listening to him. Well, on one of these occasions, I get out to the address where they say he's singing, and it's somebody's house. And I'm thinking, well, what is this about? He's singing at somebody's house. I sat on a sofa. There was only, I think, 2 other people there when I got there. So I get really embarrassed about other people a lot of times. If I go to a book signing and there's nobody there, I'm worried about the author. That's kind of how I am. So I'm just almost wanting to flee this place. I mean, I'm just thinking, oh my God, he's going to come here and there's going to be 3 of us. And there wasn't much more than that when he showed up. I think there was less than 10 people. And he shows up and he just starts singing. And I don't recall him alluding to the number of people or how small this was or how kind of bizarre this was. And he sings for like 2 hours. And then he says, okay, we're going to take a break now. And he takes a break and he goes over to the kitchen, and we went and we talked to him in the kitchen, and he comes back and then he sings another hour and a half or so, and he sings wonderfully. He lived in Tennessee, so I presume he had to fly out, drive out, whatever. He went a far way. He shows up. There's 5 people, 6 people. Are you kidding me? Well, he understood that because he was doing what he loved to do, every day of doing that was a privilege. And so I learned a lot from watching him that night. I learned a lot about what it means to actually be involved in your calling. And I learned a lot about professionalism too. It's a gift when you get to do the thing you're great at, when you get to do the thing that makes you happy. So that's why he does that. He doesn't do it for the perks. He didn't do it for the money. He did it because he loved to do it. And when you find that thing you love to do, you will know that you love to do it. Now, you want to make your goal as wide as you can make it. When I quit being a lawyer, at first I thought I would become a college professor, because that's kind of the obvious thing if you're going to get involved in history. Okay, let me go back to graduate school. And something in me said, I went to a conference and I thought, no, I can't do this. No offense to academics out there, but I never loved school. I love reading. I love learning. I have a doctorate degree, but I never particularly loved it. And I was older and I thought, do I really want to do that? Do I really want to go back and then, the achievement I'm going to get is going to be to teach a course to college students who usually aren't even particularly interested in what I am saying. I had taught a couple courses in colleges, taught a course in Rutgers, didn't love doing it. And I had an open enough idea. What did I want to do? Well, I wanted to talk about history. I wanted to proselytize. I wanted to tell people about American history. And so what I ended up doing was starting a historical walking tour company, which has led to a lot of different avenues. But the basic thing is I'm always talking about history. And so it did me a lot of good to keep it as wide and to understand, what are you really after? Because the same thing that happened to me will happen to you. There will be something you love to do, and then there's, okay, that means you do this. Well, maybe not. Maybe there's another way to do that thing. So it gets back to know thyself. What is it that you're really after? Now, the reason I'm talking about David Olney, 2 nights ago, he's playing in Colorado. and it's his second set, and he's playing his third song. He stops in the middle, says, "I'm sorry," and dies on stage. And he really left us like a Buddha. He didn't fall off the chair. He died right there on the chair. And I was so bummed out when I heard this. I had actually, there go the glasses. I had actually been looking online to see, where he was playing. I hadn't seen him in a while, wanted to go out and see him. And I saw that they said, just a couple hours earlier, he had died. Really kind of a weird thing. And I was really bummed out, of course, for the rest of the night, but I'm going to miss him. It's a real loss, but wow. He left the way we want to leave. He had spent his life doing what he loved. And he was up there on stage doing what he loved. And the way he died, the fact that, it's funny, the newspaper article said he collapsed because it's some hack, because he or she's writing, well, that's what you do, right? You collapse on stage. He didn't collapse. It was like these mystics I read about who know when they're going to die, and they're sitting up, and they just die and they're still sitting up. He died holding his guitar on the stage. That's a sad story. It's also a very hopeful story. We all want what he had. We all want to be able to have what he had, which was spending his life. I mean, he has no regrets. If he's somewhere out there looking back, he has no regrets. He spent his life doing what he loved. Are you spending your life doing what you love? That's the question. And if not, it's time for you, as the first step of setting the goals that are going to change your life, it's time for you to look within, to figure out, what is the thing I want to do? What is my calling? And I'll be back tomorrow to talk about, once you figure that out, what your next step is. Thank you. This is David Cross, indispensable leadership.org.